Hi, my name is Dan Zeilinger, and I have been a world-traveling full-time trad jazz musician for the past 40 years. Some of my most memorable performances were on the lawn of the Edinburgh Castle, at Imperial Palace in Japan, as well as TV shows and commercials across the world. I've met many people during my career and have spent many hours on stage and off with these musicians, talking about jazz, life, and more. Some are touring musicians, some are theme park warriors, and some are casual musicians who play on the weekends with friends. I think they all have stories worthy of a movie script, and through these interviews, I'll be sharing them with you. Hi there, this is Dan Zeilinger with Trad Jazz Today, and my guest is, for my money, probably the best plectrum banjo player in the world, but who knows? I mean, there may be somebody out there hidden that I've never met in New Guinea or something. And excellent guitar player, long time friend, Mr. Brad Roth. Good morning, Brad.
Good morning. Thank you, Dan. Yes, we have been friends a very long time.
I know, it's frightening.
And so it's a pleasure to connect with you today on Zoom and be a part of your interview series.
Look, I did research.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I know. Aren't you afraid now?
I'm afraid.
I did learn some things. I was telling Brad early, for all of you listeners out there, that I watched his last interview he did with what's the organization?
The American Banjo Museum.
Yeah.
With Tyler Jackson.
There you go. And very informative. And I found out some things I didn't know about you.
Oh.
And I thought I knew everything.
Oh, no, I have lots of secrets.
So I have found out. For example, you didn't start out on banjo, or your first entrance wasn't on banjo. You sat in front of the player piano and
learned the songs.
And sang.
I did. Yeah, that's, you know.
Did you sound like Bing Crosby back then?
Nothing like Bing Crosby. Maybe Bing Crosby when he was 6 years old, but who knows? But,
I know that's a voice in your head quite often when you sing. Is the only reason I said that.
Yeah,
you know.
It was for me in my childhood. There, you know, growing up in the late '60s and through the '70s, not a lot of media present when you live out in the country or even in the cities at that time. But, you know, we had a TV, but I think we maybe got 3 or 4 TV channels. And most
yeah.
Were
out in the wilds of Corvallis.
Yeah, Corvallis, just north of Corvallis, actually, out of town. So we had a player piano in our, what we called our music room, which was really a room that my dad converted from our garage to a kind of a family/music room. Big player piano out there with lots of rolls sitting on top. And so I didn't know any of the songs other than I'd heard my parents sing them, and I thought, what a great way to spend my time on a rainy Saturday afternoon, or, you know,
sure,
just to kill some time. And I pumped the player piano, and that's how I learned, you know, 5'2" and Ain't She Sweet, and all those great old sing-along songs that I would eventually learn on the banjo as I entered the banjo band when I was 11. But between those times, I started playing ukulele, which was a perfect instrument for me to actually learn those songs on and kind of learn how chords would flow in a song.
Less of a stretch, too.
I'm sorry?
There's a less of a stretch for your left hand.
Yeah, easier on a little kid's hands for sure. So yeah, I enjoyed the songs. I enjoyed singing the songs. And it's something my mom and I could do together because she would come out and start singing with me. And it's a really wonderful memory.
You realize how happy your mother is that we're doing this, don't you?
Oh, no, she has not expressed that to me.
Well, she doesn't know it. She doesn't know it yet, but I mean, she doesn't know that we're doing this yet, but she's going to be very, very happy. You know, your mom and I have always gotten along real well.
Well, you know, she's a big fan of yours.
Well, I have one then, so that's good. I was. Oh, by the way, you know, you were talking about your teachers, and you've mentioned Hank Doherty and John and Frank Vodich to me a lot when we were hanging out heavily, but I'd never heard Frank Vodich, so I looked him up on YouTube.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Golly gee, does he have a fast tremolo?
Yeah,
I was astounded.
Frank was Interesting guy and very generous with his knowledge about playing the banjo and very enthusiastic about Eddie Peabody,
Uh-huh.
which is who I was listening to back then and who I still listen to because Eddie sort of set the standard for all four-string plectrum banjo players from the 20s on. And so it was fascinating to me, and as a young person, what Eddie was doing seemed somewhat complicated, but it seemed such a high standard with regards to just personal performance compared to what I was hearing on the radio
Sure.
those days. You know, the silly pop music that my teenage friends in high school could play just like the recordings.
And I recently interviewed Lee Floyd,
Oh,
and he's a big a Peabody.
of course.
He spent a long time talking about Eddie, um, but
I'm a Lee fan.
that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Um,
I like Lee as a person and as a player. I've always enjoyed. Uh, we've played together a number of times, and I always enjoyed his brand of playing because it's significantly different than mine, even
yes,
though we came from the same background, which is fascinating to me.
which
He
reminds me,
just
he actually
grew
said in
differently.
his interview that you were the best when it came to the Peabody style, hands
Yeah.
down.
Well, that's flattering. I hold his playing in high regard for sure. So he's a good guy and a great musician. So
Yeah,
glad you interviewed him.
living on his boat right now, but uh, yeah, a lot of people don't realize. Of course, I knew it because of y'all, that Eddie was the first $1 million entertainer in the United States.
Right. Yes. During his vaudeville days, he signed $1 million contract. I don't remember the vaudeville company, but yeah, he was. Eddie was. Most people don't realize that he was an enormous star
Oh
in the
God,
late
yes.
20s and in the 30s, and then after the war, he served in World War One. Most people don't realize
He
that
was in the Navy, right?
he was in the Navy and
Yeah.
he was a submarine guy because he was so short, and
How
so
tall was he? I've been looking up his actual height.
don't really know, but I
It's
think he was
nowhere
right
on the
around five
internet.
feet,
Yeah. Okay.
right around 5 feet. So anyway, um, yeah, Eddie set the standard for all of it, and he maintained an interest in the four-string banjo uh, through some very difficult years for the instrument, like the swing era, when the banjo really lost favor in the dance bands and the jazz bands, and his unique style of playing that was really electric. It was fantastic, and it was big, and there was nothing subtle about it.
Oh no,
And
very much so. Which is one of the reasons I made that comment about your video that I thought was very musical. It was, uh, and the fact that you're not beating your banjo to death, which is kind of the Peabody style. I mean, it's aggressive when
yes,
it comes to especially to hand strength and things. Um,
yes, it is. That's a very good point. And if it's kind of like gypsy jazz in a way, if you don't play it aggressively, it doesn't sound right.
no, absolutely.
Yeah, but you can. For me, um, I never had the quickness in my hands that Eddie had. Um, and he obviously was a very strong man because to play that style and play it the way he did for, almost 5 decades requires an immense amount of strength and agility in your hands and your arms. And so as I grow older, I try to keep that energy, but I try to do it in a way that's perhaps more musically acceptable to modern ears.
I think what you're doing with it's wonderful. It was very listenable.
Thank you. Yeah, I always try to pay homage to Eddie because of the respect that I have for what he did. But I try to make it my own, like the arrangement of Sing Song Girl that you mentioned to me earlier. That was a famous Peabody tune. He played it in a medley with Chinatown. And he presented it in such a way where it was really flashy, great on stage. I mean, I played his arrangement for many years, and it had a lot of those cliche oriental, open fifth
Sure.
kind of sounding things in it. And as I listened to the tune, and I have the sheet music for it too, so I learned the melody properly, and I learned the original chord changes. And I know Dan Barrett would be so terribly proud of me. Uh, but it presented itself in an interesting way on the banjo to me after listening to period bands play it and looking at the music that I thought was interesting. So I thought I can retain that, some sort of originality for the song, but also do it in a Peabody-esque sort of style that fits my hands and my need to be creative within that genre.
Now, one of my favorite recordings of you doing that song is actually the Swing Savant record.
Oh yeah, now that's Eddie's arrangement.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, and Tom orchestrated a beautiful, little big band thing behind it, which is brilliant. He was so good at that, and it worked well with the horn section and with the full rhythm section. So I enjoyed the fact, and it was very successful on stage when I performed it live. People really liked it because you move around the neck so much. There's so much
Sure, it's real
motion
visual.
in the left hand, very visual. Yeah, and he utilized something on the instrument we call harmonics.
Now,
Uh,
did he invent that tuning?
no,
Okay.
plectrum banjo tuning, I'm not sure of the origins of plectrum banjo tuning. He was one of the pioneers of it, I know that. Um, so he had a way of making it musically exciting so you could actually listen to it on a record, and he had a way of making it visually exciting so it would be great to actually watch him perform it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Of course, during my formative years when I was a kid in Oregon, there was very little information available on Eddie Peabody. I mean, I never saw an 8 by 10 picture of him. The only pictures I had of him were on his dot records that he started recording in the mid 50s, I think, early 50s maybe. And I never saw any movie footage of him playing. So when I finally saw that stuff, it was unbelievable. I mean, the first time I saw him, the earliest film footage of him playing his iconic version of St. Louis Blues, I watched it probably 60 times in a row, over and over and over again, because I'd known the arrangement so intimately up here and under my fingers. I could play it just like he did. Um, and it came at a great price. I mean, I had to study it for a very long time to get the subtle, nuanced sort of things that he was so good at doing. So to watch him do it was
Oh, yeah. And when you have the addition of his visuals and facial expressions,
yes.
it really, really. Well, see, I've kind of been cramming Eddie Peabody videos, getting ready for these interviews. Well, you know, and by the way, I know way too much about banjo because of you. I just thought I'd let you. For
I
now,
apologize.
Eddie did help develop the Vox style, right?
He, from what I've heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, he actually was part of the design process with the Vegavox banjos. And why he did it, I don't know. There's no interview uh, information that I've run across about his involvement. I've just heard and read in certain places that he was involved in designing the instrument with Vega to make it more, to change the tone. The Vegaphone banjos he was playing before he started playing his Voxes had a very pronounced mid-range quality to them. And if you listen to his really early recordings like You Don't Like It Not Much, and his original recording of St. Louis Blues and Me and My Shadow and those things that he did in the 20s, he was playing a Vegaphone banjo, which had a much shallower resonator than the Vox you see sitting behind me,
Right.
and a much more pronounced mid-range. So the Voxes came along. Not only did they sound slightly scooped in the middle, which I think gave it a more pleasant tone, but you could tighten the head from the top of the instrument without taking the resonator off.
Right.
And I think that was a big plus in those days because, of course, everybody was using skin heads.
Well,
So
being.
interesting.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, interesting to listen to his recordings. interesting to listen to his recordings from that era, from the late 20s, and then hear something that he recorded over in England, let's say in 1931. And you can not only hear the difference in his instrument, but you can hear the how his style and how his abilities were progressing technically and musically, and how his playing had changed. His playing made drastic improvements from about 1925 to about 1935, and the 30s and 40s, as far as I'm concerned, and into the 50s too, were his golden years when he was really playing his best. I mean, listen to his recording of Many Happy Returns of the Day from England, which is recorded beautifully. His playing is so crisp and clean and articulate and so exciting to hear because it's so dynamic rhythmically. I get excited just talking about it. You know, his right hand control and the ability he had to subdivide the beat so accurately and still make it sound musical is great. I mean, if you've ever sat down with a banjo and tried to do what he did, you'll develop an extreme appreciation for what he was capable of.
Just a few times that I've had a banjo in my hand and was quickly taken away from me, I realized just what incredible amount of left hand strength it takes, which I think a lot of people, laymen, don't quite understand. That left hand strength is phenomenal. Yeah, the speed in the right hand, but the strength to do those bar chords and going up and down the neck and grabbing things like that is just ridiculous.
Yeah, and if you kind of want to nerd out on that, which I enjoy doing because I enjoy the details.
Nerd away.
Yeah, when Eddie had a way of really extending his phrases so they didn't sound like short, choppy chords that he was just bouncing to. And the way he did that is he kept his fingers down on the fingerboard. So as he moved from position to position, let's say he was playing a melody, like with an F chord with an A note on the top, he would have his fingers down, and if he needed to move to a C7 with a C on the top, he would transition his fingers in such a way that he would hold them down as long as he could. So really, the positions sound like they're connected.
It came off more as a gliss.
Almost, yeah.
For a brass player, that's what
yeah,
you are.
But it was so fast. It was happening so quickly that you didn't hear an actual whoa.
Right, but he didn't let up and come down again.
No.
Right.
And talk about needing strength to sustain that sort of pressure on the instrument for just the course of one song is it's unbelievable how much strength it takes in here. And as I get older, it's getting harder for me to do. When you and I were playing together so much years ago, it was like falling off a log because I was in my 20s and you know, I had no pain.
Yeah, it's hard to wrap our head around hard for me to wrap my head around how long ago that was that we were playing together. You know,
we probably started in the early 80s together.
Yeah, in fact, one of the things I was trying to remember as I got ready for this interview was exactly when it was, where it was we met. I don't know if it was at a Misbehaavin rehearsal or out in the LA County Fair.
I think it was before the LA County Fair, because weren't we playing out there with George Andrus?
Right. That's how we ended up with the Knots gig.
Yeah, and I think the first time I met you was at a Misbehaavin gig.
Or the rehearsal at Mike Olson's house, maybe.
No,
that was right. That was John Chessel.
Mike was already gone from the band, or the band was transitioning.
Oh, okay. So it was at Bill Mitchell's then.
Yes, but I think it was on a gig that we met actually, and I think it was down in San Diego. Fred Montgomery booked a gig down there for the Jazz Society.
Okay.
And I think it was like their monthly meeting, if I remember correctly. And Brian Shaw had been telling Fred, the leader of the band, about me and how Brian wanted me to join the band. So Fred invited me down there on this gig. And so I thought, yeah, sure, what the heck? You know, I love playing banjo in a traditional jazz band. It's, you know, and so I thought, I'll do it. What the heck? I love Brian's playing, and if that's the only reason I go, then that's enough of a reason for me. And so I got to the gig and enjoyed the band very much, and you were there, and I think that's when we originally met. And the funny part about that story is Fred didn't say a word to me. Not a word, like, great to have you here, you played great. Just after the gig, he just started handing me shirts and ties and a vest or something. And he didn't even ask me to join the band. He said, here's your clothes. And then he left.
That's funny. I didn't realize that. Well, let's back up a little bit. Let's back up to the Jazz Miners.
Oh, yeah.
Later on today, for me, I'm going to be interviewing John.
John Brand?
Yes.
Oh, my buddy.
So you need to give me some dirt for his interview.
No dirt. Here's the dirt on John Brand. He's the nicest guy in the world.
I know.
He never says a bad word about anybody. He's the funniest man I've ever known. He's a blast to play music with because he just wants to have a good time. And on top of it, he plays really well. So
oh, yeah, absolutely.
John and I were best friends when we were in high school, and still he's one of my dearest friends nowadays. I talk to him quite often.
Good one
on you, mate.
My best memory of John was when his horn fell apart at Sergeant Preston's. And he called me up to borrow my horn.
Oh, did he?
And I showed up with that and a trombone. So I sat in on trombone and John used my horn. It was hilarious.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think you were on that. I'm pretty sure. And John Police was playing drums.
I did play at Sergeant Preston's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that was I don't remember too much about that gig. That's kind of.
Well, it's going to get even worse because I'm going to ask you about some Jazz Minor stories.
Okay, yeah.
But you were the youngest in the band, right?
I was, yeah. I joined the group in very much the same kind of way that I joined the Misbehaavin jazz band.
For those of you out there who don't know about the Jazz Miners, I'm surprised you're watching this interview, first of all. The other thing is they were the absolute hottest youth band on the planet.
The only.
When they oh, absolutely. I mean, as my first interview for this series was actually Matt Perrine. Oh. And he was talking about how kind Rusty and the band were to him. I guess Rusty actually had them at their house and gave them the what for on the arrangements and things.
Ah.
But he had mentioned the Jazz Miners, and he was trying to express to me and to the listening public how enormous that band was as far as popularity.
Yeah, it was kind of it was a great experience, and it was fun to experience it with a bunch of young guys.
Now, who was in the original band?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. So there was a transition in that band, and there were some brothers that were in the band who played clarinet and trombone, and I didn't know them too well. When I first started playing with the group, those guys left, and Rusty was kind of reorganizing things. So I wasn't in at the very beginning, but very close to it. I was a young person in nowhere, Oregon, out in the country, trying to learn Eddie Peabody solos, and that's what I was all about. I wasn't interested in playing it with the jazz band. And my dad came to me one day and said, hey, there's this youth band in Eugene, which is, I think, maybe 45 miles from where we lived. So to me, it was a long drive. And my dad said they're looking for a banjo player. And it's a bunch of young people. They're playing traditional jazz. And I think you should give it a try. Never done anything like that before or even considered it. And I said, Dad, I want to work on Eddie Peabody solos. I don't want to play with a band. Okay, so he says, well, we're going. So we went to...
How old were you then?
This was 1974. I was 12 years old. And as a matter of fact, it was May of 1974 that I first played with the band. I have a newspaper clipping of that first time I played with the band. There was someone from the Eugene Register Guard there, and they snapped a photo of the band, and there I am sitting playing my banjo, and the date's right of May 17th, 1974. So I went not wanting to be there. And, of course, they were playing some songs that I never heard before. Everything's Peaches Down in Georgia. Never heard of that song.
Yeah.
And then they played Margie. Okay, I knew Margie. It was an Eddie Peabody song. Okay, and they did it in my key, so I was good. I knew how to play it. I could actually play some some melodic and rhythmic variations in it. It was a real formative time for me. So there was a lot I was still trying to figure out. But I had a blast. I loved it. Okay, so who'd have guessed? It was a surprise to me. And so at that point, Rusty started reorganizing the band and bringing other people in, and some young players from his high school, Mark Curry. Mark.
Sure.
Clarinet, saxophone player. And we were looking for a trombone player, and we found a guy down in Glide, Oregon, a little town called
That's kind of
Glide.
appropriate, isn't it?
Glide, Oregon, yeah. Well, it's close to Roseburg, down in Douglas County, if you know where Roseburg is.
Sure.
His name is Scott Wadsworth, and all these guys are still my friends, my dear, dear friends now. I communicate with them and talk to them quite a lot. And so Scott came up for a rehearsal, and he was really excited about playing. He kind of grown up around the kind of music that we wanted to do, so he was super excited. So he joined the group, and then at that point we didn't have a bass player, and we were looking for a bass player, and so Rusty found John Brand. Okay, John Brand was a senior at Churchill High School. I don't remember. It's not the school that Rusty went to. Anyway, John came to one of the rehearsals because he was kind of interested. He played string bass at that time, but he only was playing the school string bass, so he didn't have his own instrument. So when he came to the rehearsal, he just brought an electric bass with an amp. Oh. And we all went, this is not going to work. And he came with really long hair, and it was uncomfortable at first because you're just trying to get to know each other. But boy, he turned out to be just a wonderful friend and a wonderful musician. He found his horn on a... Oh, you'll have to ask him to tell this story.
Okay, yeah. I also want to ask him. Also want to ask him about vacuuming the Disney streets with it. So,
yeah, you'll have to. He would tell it much better than I. Anyway, he got it. He got a tuba and learned how to play it and played great with the band. And so that was kind of the core of the group at that point. We just started rehearsing almost every weekend, I'd say. And I joined the musicians union up there. We started getting gigs. We just started accumulating or logging the hours together as an ensemble and logging the hours on our own individual agendas that we had to kind of work out because it was all a brand new experience for all of us. And so we'd listen a lot to recordings, which is something that I think is invaluable as a group, which very few groups that I've ever been in have actually done that, to just sit down and listen to Armstrong recordings or listen to the early Bix recordings and pull them apart and see what's making it tick. And I think when you do that collectively as a group, it's such a great learning experience, and it brings you closer together musically, get you on the same page.
Now, as I was doing research on you, I noticed that a couple things were, for example, when you guys first got down to LA, when you got the Disneyland gig, didn't you live in Hollywood for a while?
Well,
I thought you were in the same building as Scotty Plummer or something, if I remember right.
Yes, I did. Those were, well, some dark times for me because I really didn't like being in Hollywood. My dad got me an agent in Hollywood, and they were trying to push me in the pop culture of the 70s, TV auditions, commercial auditions,
Sure. No, I understand.
It was not...
Dog and Pony Show.
Yeah, yeah. It was not to my liking and not what I was meant to do. So it was a brief season when I was in Hollywood living there with my parents. And it ended somewhere in the middle of my senior year in high school, and then we went back to Oregon. I
didn't mean to bring up bad times here. I was just...
No.
I didn't see it in your bios.
Yeah, no, it's not something I really talk about much, but it's part of my history, so there's no denying it. That's for sure. Um, and really, I have no bitter memories of it. It was an interesting
Hollywood's not a
experience,
great place for a kid.
especially when you've grown up in the country in Oregon. It was a dramatic, um, kind of disturbing experience for me because Hollywood is such a difficult place to live in. Let's
Culture
put it
shock,
that way.
big culture shock.
Yeah, yeah. So, and it's not what I was meant to do. I'm music. Here's the three things I like about music, whether it's trad jazz, whether it's sitting and playing an Eddie Peabody thing, whether it's playing my guitar with my girls and doing, swing tunes from the 30s. I love melody and harmony. That's what I love more than anything else. And I've always tried to play a melodic style on any instrument I play. I never really got carried away with the technical side of things because my ears just loved melody so much. I mean, I was raised, of course, on the Peabody recordings, but my mom around the house would play Errol Garner
Sure.
and all this big fancy orchestral music that I loved and that had this beautiful harmonic thing happening of these chord changes that would just flow so beautifully from one to another, and that had all these wonderful upper extensions on them that it didn't make any sense to me. I just knew I loved it. And so for me, it's if I had my banjo and I knew a song like Sing Song Girl well, and I know that I'm playing it right, and I know all the changes work, I just love sitting there and playing the melody. It's
Sure.
great fun.
Sure.
Yeah.
Um, I want to bring up a few memories
Okay.
of mine and yours that you may even have maybe not forgotten, but haven't had to the front of your brain in a while. First one being that when you found out I was recording children's music using a DX7 banjo stop, you flipped out and offered to do anything I needed, whether it be banjo, ukulele, or guitar, as long as I wouldn't use a synth again.
Did I really?
Yes.
That sounds like me, especially back then.
Now, I've got
Yeah.
to tell you that those cuts, those children's tunes we did, are now
Yes.
showing up on YouTube
You're kidding me.
with the tagline "Worst Children's Show Ever." So all that Teddy Ruxpin stuff we did and the stuff we did for Peppermint Park, that's all out on YouTube now. It's
Oh my
craziness.
gosh. No kidding.
As, as you know, my son's the band director over at Orange Lutheran, and some of his students found it, and yeah, so I said, "Hey, is this your dad?" And so we have that one to talk about.
Oh my goodness. Yes, nothing sacred. If you did it and people have access to it, they'll put it on on the internet for you, whether you want it there or not.
I just remember, you over at Brian Curtin's apartment, his recording studio.
Yes.
You, me, Rusty, and on a couple of vocals we used Kathleen. Uh,
Yes.
yeah.
I
So
remember that too.
uh,
Well, taking a step back with regards to that,
sure.
and your remembrance of me being disgusted by the sound of a synth banjo, um, yeah, kind of like you, I've always been a purist, and I've heard people try to make a banjo sound on a keyboard, and I've heard how just incredibly wrong it is. And so I, in my kind of snobbish way, I'm sure I said, don't do that.
Well, I've got to tell you, I've kind of been doing it again.
Oh, have you?
Well, I just for my own amusement because on my software I use Finale as a manuscript software, and they've got some sounds included. So I was wondering if I actually used the correct voicings, if they would come off better, and it doesn't. So.
Oh, no.
But I actually like tried the same changes with tenor voicings and then with plectrum voicings, and
Right.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's not the same. It's like trying to do a synth trumpet, which nobody has done yet.
Oh, right. Yeah, it doesn't work. Interesting. Very interesting.
I'd also you have to go and look through some of the interviews I've been doing. I just did one a couple of days ago with Bill Dendel,
Great.
and
Another one of my favorites.
I was talking about how I was playing duos with you at the Banjorama when I met him. and that he had called me up on stage, asked me if I wanted to sit in with he and Eddie, and they
Oh.
called All the Things You Are.
Yeah, that's not like playing Bill Bailey.
No, no, no. And so he laughed at it and said, that was kind of me, wasn't it? And so,
No, Bill is great. I've enjoyed uh, playing music with him on the few gigs that we actually. Bill and I played a jazz festival down in Mexico together one time where I was playing guitar and he was playing trombone. So neither one of us were playing
yeah,
banjos.
that was with George, right?
George Probert, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In fact, you did George's recording. Um,
yeah. I
which one was
recorded a
that?
CD with
I'm
George.
trying to remember the name of it.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got it here. Here, well, you
As
did
time.
two with George. You did Siren Songs,
Yes.
and you did As Time Goes By with
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. The Siren Songs was a large trad band, with the typical trad instrumentation. I don't think there was piano on it, so I think it was just me. Clint Baker played drums. Uh, I think June Barnes played string
Yeah.
bass,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, it was a very, 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 very moldy fig trad thing, which I really enjoyed. And I played an old Vegaphone banjo from the 20s on it. And it was, for me, just pretty much playing rhythm. I think I maybe took one solo on the entire recording. But it was good. Everybody was kind of like-minded stylistically. So it was an interesting venture. And then the other one that I did with George with a smaller group, two reeds, banjo, guitar, and string bass.
Right. Right.
And it was always interesting. Well, George just as well as I do. Um,
Practice.
yeah, practice. You need to go home and practice, Brad, with a pipe in his mouth. You need to go home and practice. Anyway, he was a joy, and I loved playing music with him. In the studio, you just had to have your ducks in a row because you had one chance at these tunes. That smaller group recording, As Time Goes By, we didn't play any of those songs more than once. It was once. We may have talked about the roadmap or something before we played, but it was very much a purist kind of, who was that guy in New York? Norman Granz,
Okay.
producer, who was very much a stickler for just setting up the mics and having everybody play. And whatever came out is what he put on his record. And George was very much like that. So it was, while it was fun, it was kind of nail biting at a time. You felt like you were walking a tightrope at times.
We have a couple of. If you ever get nostalgic, by the way, I have another channel that's just Daniel E. Zeilinger. Make sure you use the E, or else you'll get an Austrian bodybuilder, Daniel E. Zeilinger. And it's a series of slideshows I did, and there's two of them of Misbehaavin, which is where he had that one cut of your cheesy mustache. And I used some of the Misbehavin tracks as backgrounds.
Oh, great.
So that's kind of cool. And of course, this one is a lot of fun too. God, I've just lost the caboose on my train of thought. Your daughters,
Yeah,
Euphoric Swing,
right.
good stuff. And a lot of my buddies are playing on a lot of these things. In fact, I'm going to be doing an interview with Nick Scarmack coming up, and a few of these people. How does that feel, having such talented daughters and them getting them on stage? Are you having any?
It's a long story. I can tell you that it's wonderful, and it's probably the most fun I've ever had musically. And I've had a great deal of enjoyment from playing the years that you and I played together in the Misbehavin band. There were some just great times, and
Which I won't bring up.
right, okay. Interacting with my girls in a musical setting there's something really, really special about it for me. There's a level of satisfaction that I don't get from playing with any other musicians, and so it's a thrill for me. I love doing it. Whenever Noelle comes to me and says, I got this song I really want to make a video of, I'm all there because it's just so much fun,
It's nice to see because I know that wasn't the way with you as a kid.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I asked that question is I realized we used to talk about how your father would ask you to perform for company and then start talking, so that's one of the reasons I asked the question.
Oh yeah. Um, yeah. I encourage my girls musically, but I don't in any way try to dominate what they're doing. I let them find their own way. If they need guidance or it seems like they might be struggling, I'll offer some help. Um, if they're doing something, I'll sit there and listen and enjoy it because there's nothing more satisfying than hearing your kids play music. My youngest daughter Sophia,
Yeah, she has great
uh,
time, by the way.
yeah, the string bass players that I work with in jazz bands, they love it when Sophie plays because she swings and she stays out of the way and she has such a natural feel to what she does. I've done trio gigs with her with just electric guitar, string bass, and Sophie on brushes, and it is such a pleasure.
Oh, I
But
agree.
there's a level of satisfaction there, doing that stuff with my girls that is wonderful. It's kind of unfair to compare it to other things because it's family.
Sure.
There's something uh, deeper about it.
Well, I'm not proud of my kids at all. So,
Of course you are. That's
which
because you're a good
let me,
dad.
when we were hanging out with Misbehaavin all the time, of course, my kids were infants,
Yes.
and so the question is, do you understand more about me now that you've become a father?
That sounds like a loaded question, Daniel.
I just thought I'd throw that out there. But I
um,
remember, like when we were in Laughlin, Brian used to complain all the time about my kids being like little Indians and stuff.
I don't
Revenge,
remember.
time is the best revenge.
Yeah, I don't think I complained about your kids. I
No.
actually enjoyed your kids, and so I do remember, though, I will say the first time we were just playing casual here in Southern California, I came by your house and picked you up.
Yes.
And I didn't know you at all at that point. And so I got to your house and I thought, oh, he's probably living with his folks. And there you were married with a little baby, which was Melody, of course.
Yes.
So it shocked me. And I was, at that point I thought, okay, Dan the dad. Dan is
Oh
a
yeah.
dad. And
I think the majority of the people on the festival circuit had no idea I was married with kids either. But in fact, a good story was about Libby, Matt Johnson's wife at LAX. She actually brought somebody to fix me up with, and I said no. Anyway,
oh, that's funny. Well, to answer your question directly, I would say the answer to that question is yes. Being a dad helps me understand all dads better, and you would certainly be lumped in there. So I do understand better. It's the old saying is you never know until you're doing it, right? What it's like, and you don't know what it's like to be a
oh,
dad
that's so
until
true.
you have kids, and you're making the sacrifices it takes to put them first. So
Yeah,
I understand fully.
I tell my friends who are pregnant. I said it doesn't matter what people tell you. People in the supermarkets are going to be giving you advice, and you can read all the books you want to, but guess what? The kids don't have a manual, and they're going to be who they're going to be.
Hmm.
It's so true. And you are just, I mean, you're living the life. You've got a nice house in Orange, and you've got two beautiful daughters that are very talented. You've got a wife that loves you. And what more is there to life, Bradley?
I don't really have anything to complain about. You know, I get to play music. I have a devoted wife and a couple great kids who enjoy spending. They're still happy to see me in the mornings, and I enjoy their company. It's
Do you
it's
have a
been a trend.
dog?
I'm sorry.
Do you have a dog?
We do. Cooper,
See,
he's laying right down here next to me right now.
that's it. That's that's the
Yeah, it's terrific. The only thing I miss is I miss Oregon. I miss the open spaces. I miss the country. I miss the hills and valleys and rivers of my younger days.
Sure.
So I would love to end up there someday, but
You know,
it's
a lot of people who meet you on stage or in general don't really understand what an extremely private and shy person you are, which of course I know is one of the reasons that we got along so well together because I'm just the total opposite.
right.
And
You you are. Yes. Yeah.
and I'm so glad we've gotten to do this again. I'm going to kind of start wrapping things up here, but I want to give you an opportunity to say or plug anything you'd like to say or plug.
Well, I will say this. There's been it's an interesting journey, my musical journey, and some significant things have happened for me just in the last few months. And this could be a very long statement, so I'll try to keep it as short as
Oh,
possible.
I'm not.
I have,
Time doesn't matter. I just go ahead, say what you
um,
want to say.
for a number of years, um, starting about 5 years ago, I was totally disenchanted with the banjo. I didn't like the way it sounded. I didn't like the way I played it. I didn't enjoy playing it. I didn't want to play at all. And about 5 months ago, I decided I was going to hang it up and I was not going to play anymore for those very reasons. And a number of things happened. I've been fortunate enough to know some great banjo players. Tyler Jackson is one of them. Buddy Wachter is another one. Of course, Doug Maddox. And some other guys, some lesser known guys who, um, lesser known in the music industry, but very well known in the banjo community, who have collectively encouraged me and taught me indirectly how to enjoy it again. And I owe a great debt of gratitude to them. And so, it's been a nice kind of uh, reset. If there's a reset button, those guys helped me find it, And so I love sitting down now and working out tunes like Sing Song Girl and just enjoying the sound of the instrument, enjoying the feeling of the instrument in my hands. There's something that non musicians don't understand about that. There's something like when I go listen to a great musician and I see them come up on stage and they haven't even played a note, but I see the way they're holding their instrument and the way they treat the instrument. You can tell that it really is important to them. And I've rediscovered all that. So it's great. I'm super excited. I have a YouTube channel now that your listeners would be probably enjoy, I hope. I'm trying to get things up on there as time permits. Um, I'm also embarking on a recording project, a solo CD, which I've never done
Oh,
before.
that's wonderful.
So, Sing Song Girl is going to be the first song that I record. It's going to be an expanded version of the one that I have on my YouTube channel. So it's mostly going to just be banjo solos. It's really going back to the beginning for me. It's I'm interpreting songs in a very late 20s, early 30s kind of style, like my Sing Song Girl arrangement. I'm trying to be creative with it. I'm not going to copy anybody. I'm not going to play any of Eddie's arrangements, but I'm going to play them in a creative way that keeps within those parameters that
Sure.
I love so much with traditional banjo playing. And that style of banjo playing, as you well know, it just dovetails into the traditional jazz that you and I played so much. So I'm super excited about that. I'm going to record it right here in this room.
That's great.
Um, I've got some mics coming. I had a very good friend and banjo fan and supporter um, offer to finance the recording for me. And so I'm super, super excited about it. It's going
That's
to be some
great.
fun songs.
One interesting connection you and I have that you may not know about is your first album was with Big Tiny Little.
Yeah.
I recorded Big Tiny Little's last two recordings with him.
You did?
I did. Best of Honky Tonk Volume 1 and Volume 2.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So that's kind of a very strange across the century connection.
Bookends.
Yeah. And the first one I did was he used Bill Dental on banjo, and the second one he used Pat Deneen. But it was quartet albums.
You couldn't have done any better than that, for sure.
Well,
It's been nice to reconnect with Pat.
I could have had you. Yeah, Pat and I have stayed in contact. In fact, I don't know. Did you hear the cut I put up on the other channel with Pat?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, what phenomenal stuff. Talking about moving the idiom forward.
The Django tune, "My Manner of Dreams."
Yes. Yeah. All right, Brad. This has been fun, man. I'm so glad we did this.
Me too.
And I hope we did get to play that once here in the Disneyland Hotel not too long ago, and I hope to share a stage with you again soon.
Likewise, Dan. I hope that happens.
All right, sir. We'll call it there, and maybe we'll do another one of these someday after your album hits.
Great. Love it.
Oh, all right. You take care.
Take care, Dan.
Thank you all for watching Trad Jazz Today with Dan Zeilinger. Make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Videos come out every Wednesday and Friday.